Hey, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to Bleav in Boston Betting with your host, Shukri Wrights. Today, I have the one and only Bill Speros. He is a senior betting analyst for Bookies, Bookies.com, and also a sports columnist for the Boston Herald. And I am thrilled to have you on today because there's a lot going on in the sports world in terms of Boston sports and even sports at large. But let's start with talking locally first because we just had Monday Night Football, the Patriots and the Cardinals. Although the Patriots won, but there is more headlines that came out of the game than you would expect from a Thursday night episode of Jersey Shore. So, Bill, let's start with the New England Patriots are 7-6 right now, going into the Christmas Eve matchup against the Bengals. What are some of your early impressions coming from the game on Monday night against the Arizona Cardinals? And what do you make of the Patriots given where they currently are right now, holding the last wildcard seat in the AFC?
Well, you talk about Jersey Shore, you have Snooky Patricia and Mac the Situation Jones. And Snooky
Oh
and
that
the
was perfect.
Situation aren't getting along right now. At least they weren't getting along. It's a great analogy because that game was like those reality shows. I mean, look, I'm addicted to 90 Day Fiance, and my wife and I love Married at First. I'm addicted to all that. Believe me, I love it
Yes.
all, and I'm like unnaturally obsessed with all the wives and sister wives and how he dumps them all when they get old and fat. But so Snooky in the Situation had a problem during the show on Monday night. But much like the shows that we see on these reality shows, what you see on the air isn't necessarily what happens in real life. And it's usually edited and scripted, even though it's not supposed to be. So I listened to what not Patricia, but what Mac Jones said after the game. And I would say if there was a real concern with that, I would imagine that Belichick would have grumbled or grunted something about it. So I think that Belichick is fine with it. I mean, he saw Brady and McDaniels yell at each other for a decade. It's during the game. So I don't think there's an issue there. I think the issue is they need to let him throw the ball more,
Yeah.
obviously, especially with the injury situation at running back. Um, but in terms of that overall win, that is like, I cannot remember a Patriots win where the reaction among the fan base was so depressing. You know, there's moral victories. That was almost like an immoral victory. It was like they won the game, but it was as if they were the Bucks. I don't think the Bucks fans were as upset losing 35-7 as the Patriots fans were
Mm-hmm.
winning that game Monday night, which is a little surprising. I understand the concerns and they're valid. I mean, I'm looking at the Patriots schedule right now. It's my first screensaver. Of course, my second one is the Bucks schedule. But look at the schedule. I mean, who knows what's going to happen with Josh McDaniels? Remember the last time Josh McDaniels coached against the Patriots? Um, I think it was Brock Osweiler led the Broncos to a win in Denver in overtime in 2009 when Josh McDaniels was coaching the Broncos. That was the last time he coached against the Patriots, and he beat him with Brock Osweiler.
Yeah.
So who knows what to expect Sunday? I think the Patriots should beat the Raiders. I think the Raiders are terrible, and I think that Belichick is smart enough to figure out a way. But then look at these last three games. The Bengals, the Dolphins, and then at Buffalo. I mean, that's like a triple shot of death. The only saving grace they might have is if the Bills are already locked into either the first or second spot on the eighth, and maybe they don't necessarily play all their starters the full way. If it's like a mini bye or something for them,
Mm.
they might catch a break there. And of course, the Dolphins were using space heaters inside SoFi Stadium where it was 55 degrees.
Wow.
They're going to Buffalo this week and they're coming to New England on New Year's Day. So maybe there's some hope there. And the Bengals, ironically, get Tom Brady one week, then the Patriots the next. So who knows? I mean, there's a glimmer of hope in each of those games, depending on how you slice them. But the reality is their offensive line is terrible. Their play calling is terrible. And their defense is making way too many mistakes, as well as they played the other night. So it's the troubling reaction to the win is certainly justified, as surprising as it was for me.
For me, for a lot of different reasons, I don't feel excited. I don't feel thrilled.
Yeah,
Like
that's a great. Yeah,
that's how I honestly feel. And the reason is because I was tweeting during the first half of the game, had to go to bed because I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning for the next day. But during the first half, I'm like, what are we doing with this play calling? What are we doing
yes.
like with the turnovers? What are we doing being this one-dimensional offense that very like here and there we're able to take shots down the field to Devontae Parker before he had to be taken out of the game with the head injury. But there was just so many question marks. And you alluded to that the Patriots, they play the Raiders on Sunday. They're back home Christmas Eve against the Bengals, and I was thinking ahead to the Bengals game because I'm just like, I don't know what this team is going to look like by the time we get to Christmas Eve, which is about 10 days away. But my goodness, if you are looking at the scene from a betting perspective, what's your overall confidence level in terms of the Patriots making the playoffs? Because even right now, there's still no guarantee. They still got the Raiders, as you mentioned, got the Bengals on Christmas Eve. You got the Bills, I think you got the Bills twice before the end of the season, if I remember correctly.
No, just once.
Just once. Okay. So as you mentioned, you talk about a triple shot of death. That's a triple shot of Everclear, and
Yes.
for those that don't know, those of you that know. So, what is your confidence level in terms of the Patriots making the postseason, given their remaining schedule?
Well, I just looked up the odds while you were talking. They're plus 160 to make the playoffs at Caesars, minus 180 not to make the playoffs. It's a little bit lower actually than I thought. I thought that the price, a little bit higher than I thought. I thought the price would be lower. Minus 160 is not bad. It's actually not a bad bet. The thing I like about the Patriots is that they have the tiebreakers in their favor and concerning the Jets and the Chargers. The assumption is they're going to have to certainly win 3 out of these 4. If not all 4. The Jets, I'm not really worried about the Jets, and the Chargers are who we know they are. They're a perennial 500 team that always ends up on the wrong end of every equation at the end of the year. So that's not a concern. For me, I think the concern is the Patriots. So it's a really interesting challenge for this franchise because I've written this and, I think it's been born clear and I've talked about it. No team during Belichick's reign has been more Belichickian than this one. Because you have to remember, he inherited players from Parcells and Carroll. Yes. And then he had Brady, and then Brady became his own supernova. And then even after Brady left, he had Josh McDaniels. But this team, there's no Brady effect. There's no Josh McDaniels effect. I think I looked it up. I think there might have been four starters who actually played with Brady that have run this team. So, there's no Brady effect anymore. It's gone. This is all Belichick, from having his kids coaching to bringing in Judge and Patricia to bringing in the quarterback that he specifically picked because he played for Nick Saban, to all those free agents he got before last season. That was the first time he was able to go out and spend. Those were all his guys to these drafts. The last one was actually pretty good. So this is as much his team as he's ever had coaching at any level, because it takes a while for other guys to flush out of the system. So to me, it's a really critical run for him. I'm not going to go so far as to say he's going to be fired. I think that's a little absurd. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that if the opportunity was there and Robert Kraft wanted to bring Tom Brady back to New England and Tom Brady wanted to come back to New England, that Robert Kraft would buy the groceries in this specific instance and tell Belichick to take it or leave it. I can see that scenario.
Yeah.
This is assuming they don't win a playoff game. But, I think this is, I'm not into the leg. I mean, Belichick's legacy is fine. Brady's legacy is fine. Let's talk about legacy's idiocy. But just to prove what he's done this year and last year, to whether or not it's borne fruit, I think these last 4 games are immensely important for that. And I think he knows better than anyone what the team needs and what it doesn't need. Maybe it's just a matter of execution like it usually is.
Just want to remind everyone that is listening to this podcast. The podcast is also streaming on Bleav Betting Radio via TuneIn Radio app across the country. This is Bill Speros, who was kind enough to join me on the Bleav in Boston Betting podcast on the Bleav Network. He is a senior betting analyst for bookies and sports columnist for Boston Herald as well. And as you were talking about, like in terms of the legacies, in terms of Brady and Belichick, it's solidified. And at this point, there's very little that can be done that can change either legacies, respectively. Now, as far as Belichick's legacy is concerned, or his story, I think his story is still left to be finally completely written, if you will. I was looking at the odds for the Patriots and Raiders matchup for this week, and right now the money line, pardon me, is at a minus 106 in favor of New England. And however, one thing that has caught my eye is that there are many people who believe that the Patriots will enter this game as underdogs versus the Raiders in Las Vegas. Although the Las Vegas Raiders have been in a bit of a downward spiral, if you will. Bill, do you agree with that assessment? Do you believe that the Patriots should be underdogs? And if you're going to bet the over, would that be a wise bet to make if you're betting on this game?
Well, I'm looking at the line as we tape. It's a pick 'em right now.
Mm-hmm.
That line's been pretty steady. I do my weekly picks usually the Sunday night, going into Monday because we got to get them up on the site. And I believe that was a pick Sunday. So you might get a point either way, but I mean, we're not going to have a tie. So, look, I mean, if the money line, if you can get plus 100 on the money line, that's something consider. Right now, everywhere I'm looking, it's either a pick or -1, which is the same thing. So I think this is really just going to come down to a pick. I don't think the points are going to come into play. I think the Raiders have been playing well. They've won 2 straight. The Patriots are coming off, like you said, the most emotionally dissatisfying win of the franchise's history. So, and to your point about the emotion, I think outside of New England and Clark County, I'm not sure there's a whole lot of interest in this game. I mean, forget the fact that it was flexed out. I don't think people outside New England really care about, 2 mid-level teams with fringe playoff hopes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, in games like this late in the season, if you feel like there's a real advantage that the odds makers are missing, whether it be Belichick or Derek Carr against the Patriots secondary, that's when you want to make a jump. But, these sorts of games, most, disinterested observers will probably stay away from. I would imagine that there's enough other action elsewhere to draw a lot of money. I kind of like the Patriots in this game, aside from the, Derek Carr throwing, 70-yard touchdown passes to Devontae Adams and his Taco Bell restaurant. But aside from those sort of plays, I think they can stifle this offense. I'm always a fan of the under. The total here, um, you know, has kind of edged up a little bit, which makes me nervous. 44 and a half points is not a lot of points until the Patriots start throwing half a dozen screen passes on every drive. Then it looks like 54 points. But I think that number is reachable. Maybe, the one thing I've always noticed about the Patriots is they always, tend to do the opposite of what you think they're going to do.
Yeah.
They run the ball 46 times against Buffalo, and then they come out throwing her. You saw glimpses of Mac Jones being able to get that ball downfield. And I don't know the secondary difference between those two teams, but I got to believe that they're going to stretch that field. So that's where you might get some of those points on broken coverages, or plays where guys like Hunter Henry are left wide open 20, 30 yards downfield. So I can see where those points could come from. It's probably, again, it's just a matter of I think it's more of a issue of game planning. What's the Patriots game plan going to be? If you knew that, obviously you'd know what to bet. But, if they're throwing screen passes and running the ball, forget it. That total is going to be way under. But if they decide to open it up, who knows? I think the Raiders might have more trouble scoring than New England.
From the gridiron to the ice, the Bruins have been the big story so far in Boston sports this winter. I mean, although winter hasn't officially started, but in my mind, winter has started, and it's here. And arrived early in the form of the Boston Bruins. They have been the biggest story in Boston. I don't think anybody expected the Bruins to be this dominant. I mean, far and away the best team in the NHL, not just based on the standings, but in terms of what we've seen on the ice. Now, they have a matchup against the Los Angeles Kings on Thursday night. And so the early odds are that the Bruins are at a minus a 1.5 going into this matchup. But before we get into the betting aspect, Bill, like, what has impressed you most about the Bruins and what they've accomplished so far as we are now in mid-December, as the Bruins complete this gauntlet of a 9-game stretch, 6-2-1 against some of the better teams in the league, as some people have believed, yet this team has continued to enter every single challenge that has come their way. What has made this team so special this season, in your view, versus where they were just a year ago?
Well, the start, the Bruins had a huge advantage at the start of this season. They had their top two lines, picking up like Krejci never left.
Mm-hmm.
So they got David Krejci back. And I think the other unwritten story thus far is the fact that Patrice Bergeron is probably healthy, very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And he has been, and Marchand too. I mean, he comes back from an injury, big question mark, comes back like he never left. Bergeron every year looks like he just, walked off of Omaha Beach. But he appears to be very healthy. And I think, having Krejci back has really just, it's almost like if you were really close with some people and you maybe see one or the other, again, to your Jersey Shore analogy, it's not really the Jersey Shore until, Snooki and JWoww are together, right?
Facts.
If Snooki's just there, it's kind of like, eh. I mean, Krejci's kind of like JWoww. He shows up, and that's the magic, right? You have, what's his name, Paulie? Is that right?
You're talking Pavel Zacha, the check line.
No, I'm talking about on Jersey Shore.
Oh yeah, on DJ Paulie and
Paulie
and Ronnie. Don't forget Ronnie.
Ronnie.
Yep.
JWoww and
Sammy.
Girl, Sammy. So when you have them all together, there's chemistry there. there's a past, right? There's
Yes.
past conflicts and past triumphs. And so you have, you bring Krejci back, and I think that was, it's like if you're cooking and you add the salt or the sugar and then everything comes together, the other 50 ingredients mesh. And I think that's what's happened with the Bruins this year. And that's why they were able to come out of the gate. And, they got back Marchand. They had, players coming back that were hurt. So they're fully healthy. That's obviously important. And goaltender's been spectacular. What a boost he's given them, the young one. So, the goaltending has been way better than expected. And your best players are healthy and performing at their best. I don't think it's a real, secret what they're doing well. And the other thing too, that I think is important that they have to keep up if you want to talk about a playoff run is they're dominant at home.
Yeah.
And in the playoffs, you need to win at home.
Absolutely.
What happened in 2019?
You lost games 2, 5, and 7 on
they
home
lost
ice.
3 games in that series on home ice. That's inexcusable. So the fact that they're dominant at home, and if they, when you hear have they peaked too soon? My only concern about that is the part about them kicking ass at the Garden. If they can establish ownership of that place and, use it to intimidate or depress incoming opponents in the playoffs. And of course, if you have home ice in that game 7 at home, I mean, that's the difference in winning a Stanley Cup, because that 2019 team was as good as this one. It's like almost the same team practically.
Oh yeah.
And so, except for the goalie. And so, they lose 3 games at home in the finals. This team may not lose 3 games at home all year. It's like the 85, 86 Celtics. They lost 1 home game all year, including the playoffs. Wow. So this team has to be like that going into the postseason. I know guys are going to get hurt. I know, guys are going to get worn out or whatever it is. Peak too soon, but then everybody gets hurt. Everybody gets worn up. That is equal across the board. Players getting hurt, teams getting tired, the season dragging on. What isn't equal is having dominance at home. And to me, that's the most important thing they need to carry throughout the entire season and into playoffs if you want them to win a Stanley Cup.
Absolutely. Now, if you have money on the line for tomorrow's game between the Kings and Bruins,
I am going to Gamblers Anonymous and turning myself in.
That doesn't sound like a bad idea at all. Going at it.
I'm not to the point where I'm betting on regular season. Thank God. Gambling's not legal in Florida. It's not legal in Massachusetts yet. It's probably a good thing, because I think if it was, I may be betting on this game. I mean, the Bruins are minus 220. That's a huge line. And even they're barely plus 110 on the puck line. That's betting I don't really even bother with money lines when they're below minus or above minus 150. I don't see the logic in that. I'm not betting $500,000 a night just trying to, leverage a 20% or a 30% return. I don't bet like that. If you want to bet $10 to give yourself a rooting interest in the game, fine. Bet the over. This team's potting the puck, as we like to say. Six goals. I'm normally not a fan of betting the over, but who knows? You might get 2 empty netters.
That's possible.
That's so terrible. The NHL, betting the total, and then you get those empty netters, and it's just like, damn.
I mean, the way that the Kings have rolled recently, they have been struggling, especially on the penalty kill. In which that it wouldn't even surprise me if the Bruins scored 6 goals against them. It really wouldn't, especially the way that how this offense when it's going, and it doesn't matter.
And to that point, I think the players, when they're playing well, they don't hold back. they can score 7 goals, they're going to score 7.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I suppose if I was forced to make a call in that game, I'd probably look toward the over, even though it's kind of high. But it seems like that, it's going to be a Bruins crowd there, right? In LA. So who knows? They might want to put on a show for the home team in Staples Center.
What's your thoughts on the Boston Celtics season thus far? I mean, this team is still the best team in the NBA, although they did have a bit of a hiccup on the West Coast, but they did rebound nicely against the Lakers in last night's game. So I just want to get your thoughts overall on where this team currently is and Tatum's rebound performance against LeBron and the Lakers.
Well, I think last night's win was really impressive.
Yes, I agree.
It's hard. It's got to be so hard, to be on the West Coast and want to play basketball for starters. Especially in that environment. That was a nice win last night. I mean, this team has demonstrated its ability to win in the regular season. It's demonstrated its ability to win in the playoffs. I mean, the only thing standing in its way right now are the Bucks and the Warriors, of course. My only concern with the Celtics, and I outlined this in my column today when Santa wrote my column today, and his one gift for the Celtics was a killer instinct. And I think that's what they lack. I think we saw that in the playoffs last year. I think we saw it the other night in Golden State.
And the Clippers, I would say too.
Yeah, and the Clippers too. That's a great point. Yeah. I think there's still a little bit of, I think there's still a little bit of like, oh, this is Steph, and Steph likes me. Yeah, this is great. Oh, he likes me. It's like Rudolph. She likes me. She's cute. It's like Jason Tatum. Oh, he's just cute. He's so cute. I mean, I have you watched? I tell everybody, this is what you want to do. Watch The Redeem Team on Netflix. It's about the 2008 U.S. Olympic team. It was produced by LeBron and Carter. What's his first name?
Yeah, Vince Carter.
Yeah, Vince. Yeah. And so, and it's all about how they won the gold medal. And the whole story is about how Kobe just said, we're going to kick their ass. And you guys better come along for the ride. And it's tremendous, tremendously well done. And I'm no LeBron fan, but man, he knocked it out of the park with this one. And there's a scene in the beginning about when they played Spain in the first game of the Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
And Kobe and Paul Gasol were teammates. Kobe went to Paul's apartment, met all of his teammates, took pictures. They were buddies. And then he told LeBron and D Wade, the first play of the game, they're gonna give the ball to Paul, and I'm gonna set a pick and knock him on his ass. And sure enough, the first play of the game, Gasol gets the ball, and Kobe fronts him and knocks him on his ass. And of course, they cut to LeBron and D Wade, and they're like, "Shit, I can't believe what's happening." And the point was, Kobe was like, I'm gonna kill him, even though he's my brother. I'm gonna kill him. And then they had to beat Spain to win the gold medal. So if Jason Tatum and these other guys want to be like Kobe Bryant, fine. Because Kobe Bryant would, play to win and be the killer no matter what. And that to me is what this team fundamentally lacks. And unfortunately, they don't have a Larry Bird to tell them y'all are playing like a bunch of sissies, like he did in 1984.
Yeah.
But they need that kind of motivation or moment, a person to come in and say, you guys are great, but you need to be killers.
And Al Horford is not that guy.
Well, unfortunately,
I don't think he is.
Won a championship. So, to me, it's like you want to bring in a guy that's won, and a guy that knows what it takes to say, look, you guys are awesome, but you can't let Draymond Green get into your head. Don't ever listen to what Steve Kerr tells you ever. Steph Curry wants to take Deuce and bury him. He wants to win. He doesn't care about you. He's mind messing with you. He's they have to learn to ignore all that crap and get that next level killer instinct, because they are so talented. And my God, thankfully I was on record as having said should not trade Jaylen Brown. But my God, those two are so good together.
They really are.
When they're on their game when they're in the game. You know, it's like watching Brady and Edelman or Gronk. They know where the other guy is. You know, it's from so much practice and time together. It's seamless. I love the fact that Jaylen Brown has taken all these shots. And so there's so much talent there. And it's like, it's still about championships, right? Isn't it? I don't know. And everybody's like, oh, Patriots got to win a playoff game. Damn, I remember when we were pissed when they didn't win the Super Bowl.
Exactly.
So, I think the Celtics, I think they hold themselves to that standard. So, okay, fine. You hold yourself to that standard. So, take and elevate yourselves to what it takes to win at that level. I mean, hell, just look at the history of the Celtics. You don't have to look elsewhere. Look at the Celtics teams that won championships and the mentality that they had. I mean, Red Auerbach was turning off the heat. They were calling the hotels, pulling fire alarms at the Lakers hotel. And I mean, they did everything. So I think if they can adopt that mentality, they'll win a championship because they're certainly talented enough. And this coach is amazing. And I said it in the Herald today. I think Brad Stevens is the best executive in Boston since Theo Epstein. I really do. I think he's done a tremendous job. And the best thing he ever did was to know that he was no longer a coach. And the fact that he had the balls and the brains to do that, and he put himself in this position, I mean, I give the guy all the credit in the world.
I agree with you, Bill, and we're going to wrap up the podcast on just talking about this in particular, because if you had to vote for the executive of the year in the NBA, it's got to be Brad Stevens. And no to the audience, I'm not being a Celtics homer or anything like that, but you got to consider the following. Go back to last summer when the Kevin Durant rumors were running rampant throughout the NBA. Oh, maybe there was somebody that would say, oh, they should trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant. I'm like, no. I said this verbatim on my radio show on 91.5 WMFO. Do not trade Jaylen Brown for Kevin Durant, because everything that looks gold ain't good for you. And then also, lastly, what he's done in the wake of the Ime Udoka controversy and electing to go with Joe Mazzulla as the interim guy, I give him a world of credit because, yes, you have the talent, but in some cases, you need the coaching as well. And I think Joe Mazzulla should be in consideration for NBA head coach of the year. Will he win it? I don't know, but I think the consideration should strongly be there, in my humble opinion. And I just want to say to you, thank you so much. You've been truly remarkable, and a blast to have on the podcast, and as well as Bleav betting radio on TuneIn as well. Bill Speros, senior betting analyst for Bookies and sports columnist for the Boston Herald. Thank you so much. Where people can find your work?
Go to bookies.com. I'm usually there. Or you can just Google Bill Speros at bookies.com. Or you can follow me at Bill Speros on Twitter, BILLSPEROS, and at RealOBF, RELOBF. And I tweet all my work. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get all my links.
Thank you so much, Bill, for coming on the podcast. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Sure,
Absolutely.
thank you.
My pleasure.